He was settling back into the pace of things. He found his weight room, personal quarters, and education center. All had power, thankfully. He did a bit more exploring. There were many places he had never gone to, thanks to the tight leash he had been held to, but nothing of benefit came from his discoveries. Or so he thought. He went back to his resting place, the cryosystem and the R&D labs. The cryosystem was not the only prototype laid to rest in the facility. He booted up an old computer, browsing through the logs of staff and development records from day to day. An icon was available near the bottom left, which he clicked on curiously. And he knew he had hit the proverbial gold mine. Railgun developments. Blueprints of a rifle-sized recoilless rifle said to be capable of knocking out enemy armor from miles away. Only 2 produced, both of which were currently in his possession. A lot of them had been locked away, requiring sets of keys and biometric scans to open. Again, nothing a little hands-on work couldn't fix. There were a few things he didn't want to touch. Antimatter, Alcubierre drives, gravity wells. Half theoretical, half developed ideas that, even if something tangible was produced, looked as if it could kill him upon activation. It would take him a few months for him to understand, practicalize, and utilize everything out of it. Time which he didn't think he had. The nutrition and food stores were still good, and water was restored from the power reset. The problem was that he consumed quite a lot, meaning the 50-year rations now became a several-month meal plan. It wasn't like he could just go survival mode and track down local wildlife. Serbia may have it, but not around his current location of an icy desert. His current armory was sustainable, but he doubted he would need it soon. An assortment of assault rifles were left behind, with lockers filled inside the guard quarters. His own training armory had almost every weapon he could think of. He needed to be proficient in anything, everywhere, so they produced any firearm he might have to use on duty. The problem was it had no purpose at all. He was alone and forgotten in the north, with no one coming to investigate. That was a very large issue, but one he had months to figure out. He ambled into the control center again, seeing that the system had finally been able to boot up security. The automated anti-air was offline, except for a lone missile pod, and he doubted the munitions inside were usable. Cameras, mercifully, were all functional. He had complete eyes. Security systems were all down, not that he cared. Mines were placed everywhere in the area, not that he believed they'd still work, and he didn't think there'd be an intruder problem anytime soon. The monitors displayed on the wall gave him a complete view of the empty place he knew as home. There were 3 exterior cameras, all broken. He might have to fix that. He threw on his old winter equipment. Heavy combat boots, steel toes and heels ragging against the metal floor. Insulated overalls with a wool long-sleeved shirt. His jacket came on next, with a fur hood closing over his scarred skull. Finally, gloves and his mask. He slid the gloves on before stopping at the mask. He had never seen his own full face. It didn't matter though. Tools didn't need faces. They were tools. His mask was his face. He braced himself before slamming the hard half-mask into his jaw. The process was immediate. Flesh scummed and decayed, bonding with the mask as it attached to the skin below his nose and above his chin. His jaw was now just bone as it made way for the intrusive circuits. Metal tendrils stabbed into the scarred throat. Goggles flipped up from the respirator, covering his eyes. From the eyebrows down was now covered in a light metal cover, reaching back to cover the ears, but no further. His mind felt a cool sensation, and his throat relaxed and tensed. Air flowed in and out through the molecular slits, the system testing all available sequences. Cyrillics flashed on his display. All systems normal. He flashed through the different vision ranges. All good. The gas exchange system worked. The HUD still functioned. Perfect. He then tried the most important feature of the system, the one he needed the most. The esophagus struggled. preparing once again to fail and not produce speech, but the metal tendrils in his throat interpreted true. What was left of his voice entwirled with the early mechanical translation. Subject 496. Project title Rasputin. Online and functioning. His gruff voice was barely audible. She had ditched her heels as soon as she left, needing to run and get to the archives. She knew she wouldn't make it out alive, not in a million years. She had no clue how long the stun lasted, but hopefully it was long enough. She didn't want another body to her extensive list, especially not one she considered close. She almost tripped, stumbling down into the decrepit basement. No one had been down here in a decade. They had no reason to, until now. She stopped, gasping for breath from her sudden cardio session. Cobwebs wafted into her cave when she finally recuperated. She brushed them away, marching with purpose to the distant wall. Standing in front of what appeared to be a plain wall, she carefully pressed her sweaty palm against the brick and mortar. She felt around a bit before feeling the niche between two bricks. She pushed in both, and a lever activating could be heard with the sound of a counterweight. A crevice opened beneath the stairs, leading downwards again, into the darkness. She took out her phone, clicking the flashlight feature on while keeping the death grip on her newly acquired weapon. Her best friend's weapon. She gulped. She had to do it. There was no other way. She had surprised herself. Really? An old lady like her taking down 2 agents? Not bad. She had been lucky. They weren't paying attention, and they thought of her as just an old coot for pickup. Her breakdown earlier had brought their walls lower, and they hadn't bothered to wear armor or those weird skin suits she'd seen. Excuses aside, she had done what it would take hundreds of men to do in the invasion. She even took down a general, General Bosenia, her friend. She shook her head to clear her thoughts. Why did she feel bad? Bosenia was alive. Lara had done worse, way worse. There was a special place in hell for her. She knew that much. Step by step, her feet felt the rough rock scrape the soles. The bottom came into sight. The room was small, a little bit less area than the office she had just escaped from. It resembled a small game room, complete with a couch and chessboard. The secret room had a secret room, double security, just in case anyone got a little too nosy. If they found it, most would just assume they stumbled into some official's little safe haven. Lara swiftly grabbed the side of the desk the chessboard was mounted on, clicking a small button below it. The mechanism below the chessboard gave acknowledgement, then silence. She sighed and reached to her feet. Then she pulled off her middle toe. It was a fake, a promise all had to make to even be considered into knowing of the archives. It didn't matter now. She was sure all the others were either dead or missing. The toe detached with a click, showing the odd shape that went into her foot. It resembled a small crown. She grabbed the chessboard and removed the white queen. She pressed the symbol down into the queen's spot hard. Another click. A real world, and a loud chunk could be heard. Then no more. She got up, but left her toe. No point now. This was a one-way trip. She moved the couch, grunting an effort as it slid. Behind was a small passageway, just high enough for her to stand in. She marched on. The rock became sleek as her flashlight reflected across them. Lada came to the gate at the end, a vault door covered in dust. One coat later, she twisted open the handle and heard a loud click at the door finally opening. She heard the slow ticking. Good. It still worked. She helped design this room. It was essentially a large metal box, 4 feet thick on each side. A simple design, a classic bank vault door attached to it, with one catch. If you entered this archive, you knew what you were looking for and where it was. because you were supposed to be in there and knew what to do. Someone who spent time in the archive was likely not supposed to be there. That logic considered, a final decision was implemented. Thousands of pounds of high explosives enveloped the room. Planted below the first half-inch of the metal, they lined the entire archive. The explosion would be enough to purge the entire archive, and maybe even collapse the tunnels leading into it. The timer was 10 minutes. It could only be disarmed from the chessboard by removing the piece used to open it. Once removed, the vault door would close. It could not be opened from the inside. Lada wasn't planning on leaving. To my listeners, thank you for staying till the end. As always, feedback is very much appreciated. I'm trying to improve this. And have a wonderful day.